So good day everyone. Welcome to our course unit 2 of our CRAD312 Non-Institutional Corrections. So the topic for today is all about the overview of community-based correction. So paano ba or ano ba ang nilalaman since this is the beginning of our topic. Okay, we're going to look up what is in the community-based correction. Okay, so non-institutional correction or so what we call community-based corrections are just the same. Okay po, kaya niya sinabing non-institutional kasi kapag sinabi nila non-institutional, therefore, the persons or the persons deprived of liberty are being punished outside the institutional corrections. Okay po, yun yung subject na nakuha nyo last sem. Pag non-institutional, ibig sabihin, from the word itself, non, ibig sabihin, nasa labas po sila ng institution. That is why it is also called as community-based corrections. Okay, let's continue. So, what would be the topic of this course unit? So, number 1, introduction to community-based correction. So, the government entities responsible for the community-based correction. So, ano yung mga government agencies? Also, the expected advantages of community-based correction and the community-based as an alternative to institution-based correction. So, let's go with it and bear with me. Okay. So, institutional versus non-institutional. What is the difference? As I said a while ago, diba? When we say institutional corrections, it encompasses jails, diba? Prisons, federal penitentiaries, where offenders may be undergoing investigation, awaiting trial, or final judgments, or serving their sentence. Nakasaloob sila ng institution. Ano po yan, ma'am? Ito yung mga nasa BGMP, diba? Yung nasa jail. Pwede rin po yung mga nasa national penitentiaries, diba? Katulad ng mga 7 penal colonies natin sa Philippines, and also yung mga nasa lock-up jail. So, lahat sila, or lahat ng mga person involved, such as yung mga respondent natin, yung mga PDL natin, ayan, institutional corrections po sila. So, what is non-institutional corrections na ito? So, take charge of correcting offender without having go to prison but through community-based treatment program. So, there are still criminals po or yung mga nasentensyahan na hindi naman kailangan na mag-serve sila sa loob ng mga kulungan. So, meron tayong type of correction wherein i-correct sila or wherein magsaserve sila ng kanilang punishment outside the institutional correction. And yun ang tinatawag nating non-institutional correction. So, merong appropriate program na ibibigay sa kanila para maging valid yung pag-serve nila within the community-based treatment program. So, tingnan natin kung ano ba yung mga advantages and disadvantages ng institutional and non-institutional. So, ang focus natin is about the non-institutional corrections. Since institutional corrections, natakol nyo na yan last semester. Okay, let's continue. So, community-based treatment program is what we call the non-institutional corrections. So, ano yan? Ito po yung naririnig nyo na probation. Parole. Ayan, hindi yung parole na alam nyo, ha? Pardon. So, other forms of executive clemency, ano yan? We have the amnesty, commutation of sentence, reprieve, ayan. So, lahat yan are yung mga tinatawag nating programs under the community-based treatment program or under the non-institutional correction. So, makita niyo yan sa Article 7, Section 19 of the 1987 Constitution. So, kilalanin natin yan. Ano ba yung probation, parole, pardons, and the other forms of executive clemency. Okay, probation. So, siguro, some of you alam na to or some of you naka-encounter na kayo ng mga kaibigan nyo or mga kakilala nyo na nag-undergo ng probation. Yung for example, kasi lalo na ngayon, nowadays, kilala ang probation for sa mga drug, drug-related crimes. So, what is probation ba? So, a probation is a privilege granted by the court to a person convicted of a criminal offense. So, the convicted person who is released and placed under the supervision of, so what we call this one, the probation and community control officer. It is subject to conditions which the court may impose. Sa probation, okay, hindi kailangan mag-serve siya ng sentence. Sa probation, automatically, if he applied dito, therefore, okay, ma-waive yung, for example, nag-undergo pa ng trial, okay, or nag-undergo pa ng litigation, di ba, ganyan. Ang gagawin nila is, mag-apply sila for probation. So, ina-applyan po yan ng probation. So, hindi po sila mag-undergo ng, hindi sila makukulong. Okay? Hindi sila mag-serve ng sentence. So, automatically, ma-waive yung pagsasabi nila ng not guilty. So, automatically, sabi nila guilty sila dyan. So, therefore, ibibigyan sila ng probation. Sa probation, okay, so, magsaserve sila ng kanilang punishment outside or within the community, but with the supervision of what we call the probation and community control officer. So, sila po yung nagbabantay sa kanila. So, don't worry, as we go along with this course, subject course, iisa-isayin din naman natin yan. So, yung mga sasabihin ko for today, it is just an overview. So, to give you an idea, what are the programs under the non-institutional correction. Then, we also have this parole. So, parole, it is the conditional release of a prisoner from correctional institution after serving the minimum period of prison sentence. Okay? Kung sa probation, hindi nila kailangan mag-serve ng sentence sa loob ng kulungan. Yung tinatawag naman nating parole, okay? Dito, it is a must or kailangan muna na mag-serve muna sila ng tinatawag nating minimum period of their prison sentence before natin sila is-serve outside or within the community. Naiintindihan? Sa probation, again, discuss ko lang ulit ha. Sa probation, hindi ka makukulong dyan. Okay, you will not serve your sentence. Mag-a-apply ka sa probation office and then, ganyan na mangyayari sa'yo. So, magsusupervise ka ng mga probation and community control officer. Sa parole, bago yan i-grant sa'yo. Okay? Sa parole, bago yan i-grant sa'yo, kailangan mag-serve ka muna ng minimum period of prison sentence mo bago ka makapag-approve na magkaroon ng community-based treatment. Nakita niyo yung pinagkaiba? Probation and parole. Next, we also have what we call the pardon. Ano ba yung pardon? Okay, parang sorry, di ba? Pardon. Pardon, parang pagpapatawad. Okay, what is pardon? It is an act of grace. Yan nga. Proceeding from the power entrusted with the execution of the laws, which exempts the individual from punishment for a crime committed. Okay, yung pardon, binibigay yan ng president. Okay? So, under yan ang tinatawag nating executive clemency. Ano ba yung executive clemency? Executive clemency is a constitutional prerogative given to the chief executive. Sino po ba yung chief executive natin? Pag sinabi natin chief executive, ito yung ating president. Okay? So, yung president ng Pilipinas ngayon, so, malamang si President Duterte po. So, every president, meron silang tinatawag na executive clemency or power na yan. Okay? So, grant, anong ginagawa ng executive clemency? They are to grant pardon, amnesty, reprieve, and other forms of clemency. Okay po? So, pardon, nag-serve din sila ng sentence, okay? Or while undergoing trial. And then, i-apply pa yan. Always remember, lahat ng programs po sa community-based correction, kailangan mo nang i-apply. Okay? Hindi po siya automatically na i-give po sa iyo. Minsan, ang ginagawa nila, or kadalasan ginagawa nila is i-advise yan kung sino man ang lawyer na humahawak sa kanila. Okay po? Para ma-ease or ma-lessen yung kanyang pagsaserve sa loob ng kulungan. Next, amnesty. So, sino nga nagbibigay niyan? It is a part of executive clemency, therefore, the president. So, what is amnesty naman? It is also an act of grace, katulad ng pardon. Pero anong pinagkaiba niya doon? So, ang amnesty, it is an act of grace proceeding from the power entrusted with the execution of the laws, which exempts the individual from the punishment for a crime committed. Ano pinagkaiba ni amnesty, ma'am? Kay tinatawag natin yung pardon. So, parang pareho sila, ma'am eh. Oo, tama, pareho sila under ng executive clemency. Pareho silang act of grace. But the difference is, the pardon, isa ka lang dito. Okay? Isa ka lang na may kasalanan. Okay po? At ang magbibigay lang ng clemency sa'yo, is the chief or the president. Dito, kapag sa amnesty, okay, sa amnesty naman, pwede siya dun sa mga group, crime committed by group people. If you could remember si Trillanes, di ba? So, usually ang amnesty, it is, ginagawa yan ng mga political personalities, okay? So, pag ganyan, group of persons sila, okay? And then, pwedeng mag-grant yon. And also, kapag amnesty, hindi lang ang sole president ang magde-decide dyan. Kailangan it is with the concurrence of the Congress. Okay po. Yun ang pinagkaiba nila. Pardon and amnesty. So, don't worry. Matatakal pa din natin yan isa-isa. This is just an overview. Okay. Commutation of sentence. Ano naman ang commutation of sentence? Commutation, di ba? Parang mutilation, parang pinutol. So, pag sinabi natin commutation of sentence, this refers to the reduction of the duration of prison sentence of a prisoner. So, ang nangyayari dito, for example, 12 years ang iyong, 12 years ang iyong sentence. Pag nagkaroon ng commutation of sentence, so, imbis na mag-serve ka ng 12 years sa loob ng imprisonment, so, ang mangyayari is mag-serve ka na lang ng mga 6 years, ganyan, 9 years. Depende po yan dun sa process na ginawa nila. Okay? So, that is commutation of sentence. Next, reprieve. What is reprieve? Sabi niya, reprieve is the deferment of the implementation of the sentence for an interval of time. So, it does not annul the sentence but merely postpones or suspends its execution. So, ano yun? Sabi nga niya dito, what's the opposite of reprieve? Punish, blame, charge, continuation, increase, intensify, worsen, accuse, condemn, aggravate. Okay, pag sinabi natin reprieve, hindi siya, tawag dito, when you say reprieve, hindi naman po siya yung katulad ng commutation of sentence, okay, na nababawasan. Kapag nagkaroon tayo ng reprieve, ang nangyari dyan, okay, it just only postpone or suspend its execution. Pero it doesn't mean na hindi na siya matutuloy. Okay? Pansamantala lang kung reprieve na yan. Sabi nga niya dyan, it is the implementation of sentence for an interval of time. It does not annul the sentence. Hindi niya inaalis yung sentence. But merely, ang ginagawa niya, pinopostpone lang niya. So, kadalasan ng reprieve, nakikita ko yan lagi dun sa mga, lalo na yung mga sa ibang bansa. For example, yung mga meron little injection, 'di ba? Or yung mga death penalty. So, kadalasan nagkakaroon muna sila ng reprieve or yung postponement. 'Di ba? So, ganun po ang work ng reprieve. Hindi niya inaalis yung punishment, but it is just simply nagpo-postpone lang or sinususpend. Pero still, nandun pa rin ang ating punishment. Okay po? So, what are the government entities yan responsible for the community-based correction? Sabi ko nga sa inyo, hindi yan automatic ibinibigay. Okay po? So, kailangan mag-apply dyan. And, sino ba yung may hawak ng mga community-based corrections na yan? Yung mga programs natin sa community-based corrections. Diba? Kapag sa institutional, we have the Bucor. Yan. We also have the BGMP. Diba? Dito naman sa ating non-institutional correction or community-based correction, eto, we have the Parole and Probation Administration or yung tinatawag nating PPA. Also, we have the Boards of Pardons and Parole, also what we call the BPP. And, syempre, the Department of Justice plus Bureau of Corrections. Okay, let's start with this muna. So, Parole and Probation Administration or Department of Justice. So, ano ba ang role nito? So, the Parole and Probation Administration, it is an agency of the Philippine government under the Department of Justice responsible for providing a less costly alternative to imprisonment of offenders who are likely to respond to individualized community-based treatment program. So, sila po yung, sa Parole and Probation Administration, sila yung nag-supervise, okay, doon sa mga naka-apply sa parole and probation. Okay, how about BPP po? sa Board of Pardons and Parole. So, board, sabi nga niya, an agency under the DOJ or Department of Justice whose function is to uplift and redeem valuable human material to economic usefulness and to prevent unnecessary and excessive deprivation of personal liberty by way of parole or through executive clemency. Okay, dito sa PPA, yung mga programs na handle niya is the parole and probation. Okay po. Ngayon, when it comes to dun sa tinatawag nating executive clemencies, okay, which is given by the President, okay, meron tayong boards of pardons and parole. So, sila yung nag-act as chief of, yung parang nag-approve or nagbibigay muna ng recommendation sa President. Okay po. So, magkaiba yan ha, sa boards of pardons and parole and PPA. Next. We also have the Department of Justice, of course, diba? So, DOJ acts as the principal law agency and legal counsel of the government. So, it serves as the government's prosecution arm and administers the government's criminal justice system by investigating crimes, prosecuting offenders, and overseeing the correctional system. So, sabi ko nga po, lahat ng ating programs under the community-based correction, hindi naman siya applicable sa lahat ng prisoners or sa mga person deprived of liberty, mga PDL natin. Ina-apply muna yan. And one of the approving agency yan is yung Department of Justice. So, siyempre, sila pa rin yung merong pinaka-final say if applicable ba sa taong yun, yung isang program na under ng non-institutional correction. Then, we have also the Bureau of Correction, syempre, an agency under the Department of Justice that is charged with custody and rehabilitation of national offenders, that is, those sentenced to serve a term of imprisonment of more than 3 years. So, di ba, ito yung mga national penitentiaries natin. If you could remember, yung tinatawag nating Bilibid Prison, ayan, San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm. Okay, yung 7 penal corrections, penal institution. So, under yun ng Bucor. Bakit siya nasama sa under nating ng non-institutional correction? If you could remember, yung parole, 'di ba? Sa parole, kailangan muna kasi silang nakakulong. 'Di ba? There are programs under the non-institutional corrections or yung community-based programs wherein yung ating offender bago makaranas or makapag-approve dun sa tinatawag nating community-based correction, they need to serve their sentence first. And usually, nagsiserve sila ng sentence dito nga sa Bucor. Kaya kasama pa rin si Bucor sa ating non-institutional correction kasi sa kanila natin sila kukuhanin. Okay po? 'Di ba? Kasi merong nga, yun nga, mag-serve muna sila ng sentence. Okay po? Next. So, which is better? If kayo ba ang tatanungin, ano bang mas maganda? Institutional or non-institutional? Which is better? Siyempre, malamang, okay, kung iisipin nyo, parang iisip nyo, parang mas okay ang non-institutional. Kung kayo yung makukulong. 'Di ba? Pero kung kanwari, ikaw yung nasa community, tapos alam mo yung isa criminal, then nakapag non-institutional. Anong feel mo? So, parang magkakaroon tayo ng discrimination na, hindi maganda yung non-institutional kasi napaka-dangerous ng person na yun. Bakit dito siya mag-serve ng sentence niya? So, tingnan muna natin, okay? Which is better? Institutional or non-institutional? So, advantages and similarities. This is institutional corrections and that is the non-institutional correction. So, tingnan natin. So, sa institutional correction, ayan, kung makita nyo, pareho naman sila, diba? Serve as deterrent to would-be criminals. Pareho din sila dito. Serve as deterrent to would-be criminals. Next, another. Enables wrongdoer to be reformed and rehabilitated. Also, ganun din naman sa non-institutional correction. Kaya nga correction din siya. It enables the wrongdoer to be reformed and rehabilitated. Sa institutional correction din, okay, dito naman sa institutional correction, it helped the government economically. Okay, kapag non-institutional corrections naman, it helped the government decrease cost of incarceration. Okay, ito. Sa institutional correction, kaya sinabi na help the government economically kasi Ang mangyayari, alam niyo yung hindi sila magiging pabigat sa labas kasi dahil baka madaming crime ang mangyayari sa labas kung nasa labas yung mga type of criminals. Kapag naman help the government decrease the cost of incarceration dito naman sa non-institutional correction kasi 'di ba kapag nasa labas sila ng kulungan, okay po, pag nasa labas sila ng kulungan, therefore hindi yan pasanin ng ating gobyerno para pakainin, 'di ba? Hindi sila yung mas magiging less yung gastos ng government natin since nga nagsaserve sila ng sentence outside the institutional correction. So, papakainin nila yung mga sarili nila. Not unlike institutional corrections, 'di ba? Kailangan mo ng kailangan talagang i-provide ni government yung kanilang basic necessities. So, nakita nyo na yung pinagkaiba. So, tingnan pa natin. Advantages, differences. So, institutional, and non-institutional. So, sa institutional, it protects the society from the offender. Totoo, parang sinabi ko nga kanina. Sasabihin mo siguro kung sa part mo, kung ikaw ang bibigyan ng punishment, for example, criminal ka. Kung ikaw ang bibigyan ng punishment, syempre mas gusto mo yung non-institutional. Kasi sino ba naman gusto ang makulong, 'di ba? Or makapag-serve ng sentence sa loob ng kulungan. Syempre, para sa'yo, mas okay yung sa non-institutional. Pero ang tanong, how about the people around you? 'Di ba? Ano ba yung mafe-feel nila kung alam nilang criminal ka? Tapos mag-serve ka ng sentence mo outside or within the community. So sabi nga niya dito, kapag institutional, it protects the society from the offender. 'Di ba? Ibig sabihin, hindi siya nakakagalaw within the community. So, institutional corrections, ayan, it protects the victim from the society. Syempre, dahil nga nakakulong yung criminal, so yung victim medyo parang kampante siya or yung would-be victim natin, yung magiging victim, 'di ba? Walang magiging victim. Ganun lang siya. So, another is ensure the rehabilitation and reformation through correction administration. At nakakasigurado ka na sa loob nare-reform siya kasi merong mga guards, 'di ba? Merong mga jail guards or jail officer, 'di ba? May mga correctional institutional officer. So, nare-rehabilitate and nare-reform sila kasi nga, nandun lang sila. How about sa non-institutional? Ano ba yung advantage differences niya? So, ito. So, it avoid influence or harden the criminal. Kasi, alam nyo, sa loob ng kulungan, kapag pinagsama-sama mo talaga yung mga criminal, hindi mo naman kasi ma-assure talaga na mare-reform and mare-rehab sila. Okay? Kaya, if naalala nyo, na-discuss na din yan, na, di ba kailangan merong parang segregation ng mga criminals as to the type of their crime committed. Why? Kasi, pwedeng magkaroon ng exchange of knowledge about the crime. Baka nga, for example, ito ang crime committed niya is murder. Yung isa ang crime committed niya is robbery. Pinagsama sila sa loob ng kulungan. So, anong mangyayari? Baka yung isa, imbis na ma-reform siya, na okay, hindi na siya magnanakaw or what. Baka dahil nakasalamuha niya yung ganong klase ng tao, mas lalo pa siyang naging grabe kapag kalabas niya. So, hindi lang siya magnanakaw. Baka magnanakaw na, mamamatay tao pa. So, isa yon. Ina-avoid kasi ng non-institutional correction yung influence, diba? Or parang nalilesen yun sa pag-iisip nila. Next, so the family of the offender will not suffer being separated. So, isang magandang advantage ng institutional correction is yung family iniwan nung criminal na yun. Bakit? Siyempre, hindi na kailangan kailangan i-suffer pa yung longingness na tinatawag natin or parang nami-miss nila, hinahanap-hanap nila, or baka kasi nakakatulong siya kahit papano dun sa family niya. Also, community involvement make crime less hard to control. So, parang within the community involvement naman, dahil na-reform siya or parang na-reintegrate siya within the community. Therefore, dahil meron silang patakaran or they live under the rules kapag nasa non-institutional correction sila. Therefore, mas madali silang utusan or mas madali silang makuha ng mga sa community kasi kailangan nilang sumunod doon sa mga rules nila unless they will go back inside the jail. Okay po. So, that is the advantage differences of institutional correction and non-institutional correction. So, community-based treatment programs as alternative to incarceration. When say incarceration or yung pagkakulong. So, non-institutional or community-based corrections have been accepted worldwide. So, hindi lang naman po sa Philippines yan. Actually, nag-start yan sa ibang bansa. And in the Philippines, as it recognized the need to reduce reliance on the use of incarceration. So, the following are also the reasons why community-based treatment programs for offenders are widely used. So, number 1, ayan, congestions, overcrowding in jails and prison. Diba? That is the number 1 problem kasi ng ating institutional correction. Madami nang nakakulong. Lalo na, diba, sa mga bilibid prison, tapos nakaset na lang yung oras nila. Parang nakaset time sila para sino yung tutulog, sino yung gagamit ng space nito. So, ang nasusolve lang sa community-based treatment program, isa yan. Yan, yung overcrowding in jail. So, dahil hindi na kailangan makisiksik pa sila doon sa loob, so, nagiging solution siya doon. Next, to restore the relationship between the offender, the victim, and the community by taking into the consideration of what? Rehabilitative needs of the offenders. So, protection of the society and the interest of the victims. Okay po? So, habang nasa community siya, sabi ko nga, meron namang naka-supervise sa kanya. That is why, madali lang siyang i-control eh. Kasi there is a fear na baka, kapag nag-violate siya ng kanyang mga rules na kailangan sundan, babalik po siya doon sa kulungan. So, anong nare-restore? Yung relationship niya within the community. Hindi na siya ganun kinakatakutan ng iba, 'di ba? Kaunti-unti. Or, pwede rin siyang matulungan ng family niya for rehabilitative purposes, 'di ba? For the emotional impact. Also, tawag dito, protection of the society. Kasi nga, yung fear nila na gagawa siya ng ganito kasi criminal yan. So, parang binabalik natin yung trust within the offender and the community. Since ang purpose naman ng community-based treatment programs is to alleviate or matulungan ang ating community to accept those type of person deprived of liberty, meron ding mga criminals na pwede siyang i-correct within the community. So, basic principles underlying the philosophy of community-based treatment program. So, we have the humanitarian aspect, restorative aspect, and the managerial aspect. So, these 3 principles, ito yung sinusundan natin. Bakit tayo nagkakaroon ng community-based treatment? So, bakit natin siya ina-accept or bakit natin siya kino-consider as a type of correcting or reforming an offender? So, let's start with humanitarian aspect. So, imprisonment is not always advisable. Okay? Hindi sa lahat ng pagkakataon, advisable na sa lahat ng nagkasala ay kukulong mo. 'Di ba? Pagiging makatao. If you could remember yung sa balita or yung nag-viral via FB. Nakita niyo yon, nakulong siya kasi nagnakaw siya ng 5 pieces of barbecue. Tama po ba? Or yung manok. So, if titingnan mo yung taong yon, kaya lang naman siya nakakommit ng crime, bakit niya nanakawin yun? Ano pa bang purpose? Bakit pagkain yan? So, therefore, baka may pamilyang ipapakain yan. So, diba, kaya nga, parang umano yung pagiging makatao ng ibang netizens, 'di ba? Sabi niya, bakit mo pa ikukulong? Ganun ang ganun ang tawag dito ang kasalanan niya. But syempre, batas ay batas. Kailangan yun sa process. Pero with the use of this community-based corrections, 'di ba? Parang nakaka-realize tayo na okay. Sometimes, 'di ba? Yung law natin, wala ang law or yung batas, walang puso talaga 'yan. Rule is rule. Kailangan mong sumunod. Pero, syempre, dito sa community-based correction, parang we are just thinking out of the box. So, paano ba makokorek yung isang taon yon? So, hindi naman sa lahat ng pagkakataon, yung mga criminal, kailangan ng imprisonment to correct them. So, placing a person to custodial coercion is to place him in physical jeopardy. Bakit? Kasi nga, nakalimit na siya, nakakulong na siya. So, thus drastically narrowing his access to sources of personal satisfaction. Diba? Kasi pag nasa kulungan ka, hindi mo kasama ang pamilya mo. So, tapos, Iba-iba yung mga nakakasalumuha mo, iba rin yung written mo everyday. So, sometimes, there are reasons na baka imbis na mag-reform siya or ma-rehabilitate siya sa loob ng kulungan, baka lalo lang lumala yung pag-iisip niya or to commit crime. So, not all. I'm not saying everything, but sometimes, okay? So, it reduces self-esteem. Totoo yan, di ba? Kapag nakulong ka, 'di ba, sa loob ng kulungan. 'Di ba parang kapag lumabas ka, parang nahihiya ka. 'Di ba? Parang nahihiya ka sa mga tao kasi ex-convict ka. Okay. So, yan yung mga yung mga principles under humanitarian aspect. That is why kino-consider natin itong community-based correction. Next, restorative aspect. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng restorative? Parang nire-restore. Ano bang binabalik niya? So, there are measures expected to be achieved by the offender, such as an establishment of a position in the community in which he does not violate the laws. So, these measures may be directed at changing and controlling the offender. So, the failure of the offender to achieve this can result to recidivism. So, sa restorative aspect, sabi nga niya, it measures expected to be achieved by the offender. So, sa restorative nga kasi, 'di ba, binabalik natin na alin, dapat maging law-abiding citizen siya within the community. So, lahat naman ng so nire-restore natin siya, parang nire-reform natin siya in a way na okay, makipagsalamuha ka sa community pero with the rules na alin, ito nang gagawin mo. Tama na 'yung gagawin mo. Okay? Lahat ng bisyo aalisin, okay? Ganito yung gagawin mo kapag meron silang mga program talaga. Okay, so parang nire-restore siya para maging responsible community siya or responsible member of the community. So the failure of the offender to achieve this can result to recidivism. Ngayon, ang pangit lang sa gantong community-based correction. So, meron din kasi mga nag-undergo ng ating community-based correction, pero kahit they live within the rules, okay? Pero hindi sila nagbabago talaga. So, anong mangyayari kapag hindi sila nagbabago within the community, okay? Ang mangyayari noon, magkakaroon ng recidivism or there is a probability na mag-create lang siya ng another crime. Okay po. Next, managerial aspect. So, managerial skills are special importance because of the sharp contrast between the per capita cost of custody and any kind of community program. So, it is easier to manage those undergoing community-based treatment programs than that of custodial control. So, do you believe in that? Na mas madali daw i-control yung mga nasa labas kesa dun sa loob ng custody. Do you believe in that? Ako, yes. Bakit? Kasi, alam mo, kapag yung tao, sa managerial aspect do you imagine, siyempre, sigurado ako, iniisip nyo, ma'am, paano yun? Paano sila nako-correct nun? Araw-araw ba, binabantayan siya? Okay, araw-araw ba, binabantayan siya ng mga parole or probation officer natin? Hindi po. Okay? Nagkakaroon lang sila ng setup na, okay, ganito ang, tawag dito, ganito, every Saturday, every Monday. So, depende yan. Ganito, pupunta ka dito para ma-check ata. So, sabi ko nga, yung mga nag-undergo ng community-based corrections, they are living with the rules. Meron silang kailangan sunding rules. Kaya paano nagiging mabadali yung managerial aspect or yung pag-supervise dun sa mga klaseng tao na yun? Siyempre, ikaw, if you are given the chance na i-correct yung life mo, diba? You are living with the rules. So, siyempre, iisipin nila na hindi sila mag-violate ng mga rules na yun unless, diba, babalik sila sa loob ng kulungan. Okay? Kaya nga mas easy siya. Hindi po siya 24/7 talagang binabantayan ng ating mga officers, ng ating mga parole or probations officers. So, they are just living with the rules. Hindi katulad kapag custody, or yung mga nasa loob ng kulungan, talaga yan 24/7 nakabantay. 'Di ba? Tapos meron pa silang daily routine activities na magbibilang sila ng gantong oras, gigising sila ng gantong oras, maglilinis sila ng gantong oras. So mas madali siya when it comes in supervising those type of nag-undergo ng community-based corrections. So yun lang. So, do you have any questions? So, if you have any questions about this topic, please write it down and you could ask me pag nagkaroon na tayo ng Google session. So, before I end this quote, okay, before I end this topic, I just want it to end with the quote. So, change the way you look at things and the things you took at change. Diba? The things you look at change. So, parang, kung yung nakasanayan mo or yung alam mo lang is, yun lang, stick with the rules ka lang. So, parang, think outside of the box. Ayan. Sabi niya, change the way you look at things. So, parang, wag kang mag-stick lang kung ano yung alam mo. Find for the better way. So, and the things you look at change. Diba? Parang, ano ba yung pagbabago na yon? So, nagigets niyo ba yung quote na yan? Change the way you look at things. Think outside of the box. And the things you look at change. Ano ba yung meron sa change na yon? Okay, bakit kailangan natin yung change na yan? So, applicable naman siya sa ating pinag-aralan. Since all we know, 'di ba? Alam ko iba sa inyo parang talaga ma'am, meron pa lang nagse-serve ng mga person deprived of liberty outside the institutional corrections. Yes, meron po. Okay, so that's it for today. If you have questions, again, please write it down and we will discuss it in our Google Meet session. So, thank you.